Now live. All right, let me click over and go live on Instagram too. All right, I think that'll do it. Maybe. Oh, one more click. There we go. All right, I'm back. Welcome aboard, everyone. Tonight's topic of discussion is a repeat of a repeat. We're going to talk about safe fish handling because it doesn't seem to be sinking in. So, I'm not sure why, because I did a little Google type in there, just typed in safe fish handling. I'm going to read what came up. The first thing that came up on Google is just this generic statement here. Handle the fish as little as possible and only with wet hands. Avoid touching the fish's eyes and gills. Support the weight of any fish removed from the water along the length of its body. Never suspend a fish by its lip or mouth. That is literally the first thing that came up. And then right here we have like a AI overview when handling a fish. Be gentle, avoid squeezing, keep them wet, minimize exposure and contact with dry surfaces. Reduce handling time, bring the fish in quickly so it doesn't build up too much acidic acid. That's a really good point. Thank you, AI. We can touch on that. Use rubber or rubber-coated netting. Another good suggestion. We haven't touched on much here. We can go over that. It says use barbless hooks. Yeah, I could see where that would maybe help you get the fish free a little faster in some cases. And wet your hands. Something we've covered here many times. And then it starts going into talking about handling raw seafood. And that's not to the point. So anyway, I have a couple of things here. I mean, we can get away with suspending the fish by the jaw. I frown upon it when the fish get to what I consider trophy size, maybe six pounds and up. It starts getting really dangerous. 8 to 10 pounders, I don't really like to suspend by the jaw, and if I do, it's very, very quickly. I'll do the weights in a net instead of by the jaw. Have you seen guys hang the fish by the jaw to weigh it? Man, I wish they wouldn't do that. I have a very simple solution for that. Just get a nice net and put the fish in the net and weigh the fish along with the weight of the net, and then just subtract the weight of the net. That would go so much further in helping return fish. I guess I should start this whole idea off by saying, if we're going to catch and release and we're going to practice it correctly, the entire idea of catch and release is to return the fish back in a healthy condition. But when I turn on social media or the TV for the last 30 years, it seems like the fishermen are doing everything that they can do to kill the fish and then returning it back like they've done it a favor. And it's kind of a pet peeve of mine, I guess. I've said the same thing so many times. I'm sure you guys are probably, who followed along for a while, are getting tired of me saying it. But the amount of blowback that I get. Good evening, Mike. What's up, man? Welcome aboard. The amount of blowback I get online. I was just called a Karen today for trying to. I was on another post. If somebody I follow comes by, I try to be polite about it and not, be rude. But it's hard to get anybody to listen without it devolving into an argument, really. Hey, what's up, Instagram? I'm gonna go back through here. There's a bunch of people coming in and out. How's it going? Throw any questions up. There's a little bit of a delay between StreamYard and Instagram. So I don't like watching Instagram because it's like watching myself in the past, where I see myself more real time here on StreamYard. So I'll click back and forth. Garrett, what's up, man? Talking about safe fish handling. I just Googled it, just literally typed in safe fish handling, very generic, and read off what it said. And it's pretty sad that guys simply can't even do that. It really did a good job between Google itself and AI, breaking it down and covering everything that we've covered here. And all right, that's the live stream. Thanks, guys. Just go Google it. Again, I've probably got, I don't know, somewhere in the order of 600,000 miles hauling fish around stocking lakes. I think I might qualify me. Oh, and working with some of the best fisheries biologists at some of the best fish hatcheries on this planet, taking their advice and listening to, how to get fish from one place to another alive and not lose all your money. Our young biologist here, Garrett Stanport, is in that business right now. And he could definitely answer any questions that you may have about it. I'm not the only person with this knowledge, and I certainly don't have all the knowledge in the world that I need to know. I could learn. I can still learn every single day, even with all that experience and all those years driving. There's not a day that goes by that I don't pick up another little bit of information somewhere here or there. I wish these guys that were, have been bass fishing 40 years could listen, but they can't. That's a good question, Mike. I would say that's kind of subject for debate. And Mike's question for you guys over on Instagram, I think you can see this, but just in case you can't, is the slime coat more sensitive in colder climates? I don't think more sensitive. I think it's as tough as it's going to be in warm weather or cold weather, to my knowledge. But the problem we have when it's cold is it just doesn't regenerate like it does when it's warm. So mishandling a fish in the winter is much worse for it than mishandling it in the summer when the slime coat quickly regenerates. Yeah, that's Mr. Stanport has a very good point. When you put your money where your mouth is, and you have to keep fish alive to pay your rent, I'm ad-libbing his point, but you figure out the best ways for sure. And yeah, you do. And I'll give you a real good story. How about one day you wake up, right? And you go to work 4 o'clock in the morning, and you drive 3 hours down to a fish hatchery, and you spend about $5,000 on fish that you're going to sell for 10. And about halfway there, somebody cuts you off in a weird part of the road that causes your truck to leave the roadway a little bit and buckle down, and it cracks the bottom of your fish tank unknowingly, and you lose $10,000 in a day. You think I made that story up? You figure out real quick what's good and bad. You get big ouchies when you lose your loads. Big ouchies in a financial way. Now, for me, because I had a good working relationship with the fish hatchery, I was able to recover most of the load from them. They kind of, usually when you leave the hatchery, they're your problem. But the man was kind enough to help me a little bit with that, and I didn't lose all the money, but it was only out of the kindness of Paul Williams helping me with that. He did not have to do that. Paul was a good man, and he ran a fish hatchery called Owen and Williams Fish Farm in Hawkinsville, Georgia. And if you're in Georgia, that was the only fish hatchery that I used. I did buy some fish from American Sport Fish over in Alabama, but primarily worked out of Hawkinsville and hauled my fish out of Hawkinsville. And Brian Simmons now runs that and has been running that. He's worked there as far back as I can remember, since he's a boy. He was 15 when he started working there, and now his son works there. So it's good family business. They're square dealers. They don't rip you off. They don't. It's not they won't sell you fish if you want to buy fish that's going to mess up your pond. Brian will warn you. You know, "Well, we maybe not recommend doing this and that." He's the only fisheries. Well, American Sportfish will as well, but the point is you can run into a lot of guys who will stock fish and not give you the warnings of what you're about to do to yourself. Now, if he warns you and you still want to buy them, he's going to sell them to you. He's a businessman, right? Um, but I've seen some shady dealings with the fish haulers, loading people up with too many fish way above the stocking rates. And again, I don't understand how people can't go on to the internet and just type in how many fish should I stock in my pond. AI will help you. Google will help you. It'll get you on the right track. How in God's world, in this day and age, fish haulers can talk people into stocking 1,000 bass per acre when I stock 40? I don't know, but I've seen it more times than I can care to count. Let me check over at IG for any questions. I don't have a high opinion of fish haulers that are unattached to lake management companies. A lake management company is in, like Garrett, Pristine Pond, is in business to help people manage ponds. A fish hauler is in business to sell people fish. There's a big difference. But for some reason, and I'm not sure why, a guy hauling a fish with a GED and absolutely no formal education in lake management can sell people fish that they don't need like it's going out of style. Yet me and Garrett have to beg them to do the right thing. Now, if you care to explain that, I don't know why that works that way, but the liars are always believed and the biologists are always left in the cold. There you go. It's a good point. Garrett is paid for his results, and fish haulers are paid for a product. So, buyer beware when dealing with people like that. That's all I can tell you. I would not let anybody stock my pond that didn't have a degree in fisheries. That should be I personally believe you shouldn't be on TV talking about any of these things around fish management or fish health. I mean, the last time I checked, and I'll have to go ask, but if I go down to the corner at the racetrack down here, don't you need a college degree to manage a racetrack or manage anything? Isn't a college degree like necessary for most jobs in a management position? And if so, why isn't a college degree necessary to talk about things, you know, like we're talking about now? Where do you think I learned all this stuff? This information wasn't just given to me from God above. I learned it at University of Georgia. And why does that not matter to anybody? Like Georgia has no motivation to lie. Not even that. It's almost like people hear about college and just get defensive. I'm not sure why that is. I try not to be that way. All right, let's see. We got some questions coming through on Instagram. I think. Let's see here. Hello, Portugal. What's good? Yes, I am on YouTube. I'm live on YouTube and live on Instagram at the moment. So if you missed this on Instagram, you can go back and watch it on YouTube. It'll be restored. Eli has a good question over on Instagram. How long does it take the bass to replace that slime coat? That's a good question. I'm not sure. When it's cold, it doesn't. It takes months. He'll have to wait for it to warm back up to replace it, which is why I guess I'm on that subject right now in the wintertime, because it's more important in the wintertime than it is in the summer. In the summertime, I'd say probably a week. But I'm not sure. That's a good question. I have to look that one up. You know what we could do? We could look it up on AI, little chat GPT. Let's see, learning about how ponds only has so much biomass. Yep, that's exactly what it's called, Eli. Yes, yes, that's right, Eli. I wish I could highlight this statement you've made here on Instagram, and we can touch on biomass and how it works. Okay, that's real good points. So I'm gonna click back over, so I'm looking at myself in real time. All right, so biomass is basically everything alive in the pond, and that's limited by the plankton bloom. I guess simply put, the more plankton you have, the more fish you'll have. And the less plankton that you have, the fewer pounds of fish per acre you'll have. And that's the total pounds of fish per acre. Now, to give you an idea, in Georgia, there's low limestone, which decreases water quality, which decreases plankton productivity. So you'll hold fewer pounds of fish per acre naturally. And that number is about 100 pounds of fish per acre for Georgia. And I just know that because I got an education in Georgia. Go out west or someplace where there's more limestone, a little bit better water quality, you can quadruple that. You'll probably looking at 300, 400. Let's say 400. Let's say four times more just to make math easy. 400 pounds of fish per acre. Can a lake or pond hold more fish than that? Sure, it can. Aquaculture ponds can hold thousands of pounds of fish per acre. But once you start stacking fish up into a pond at thousands per acre, you're going to start running into all kinds of diseases and things like you would normally get in an aquarium with too many fish. Um, you've exceeded the limit, so that thousands of pounds of fish per acre is going to result in death long term. If you run it up thousands of pounds of fish per acre, it wouldn't be a good management strategy for a pond because of the disease problems that's going to occur. So I hope that gives you an idea of how biomass can work. Okay. Now, in an aquaculture pond where they're all being fed the same thing and you all have the same species of fish in there and they're all taking like feed, right? That's how you're able to get it way higher than what the natural biomass could be. Now, in Georgia, what we did at Sugar Hill Outdoors Pond, because I knew already that it was going to be clear water, poor water quality, we just added a feeder to the pond and fed the bluegill every day. And that artificially brings the carrying capacity up from 100 pounds of fish per acre to that 350 or 400 pounds of fish per acre that you would have some other place in the country. So I've boosted it for Georgia numbers, right? I brought Georgia numbers up to like say Iowa or someplace else in the country that has better water quality. So now my Georgia pond is holding as many pounds of fish per acre as it can hold without creating disease problems, like a more productive fishery someplace else in the country. But that doesn't mean that if I left it alone and I didn't put the feeders on, that I couldn't grow big fish in that Georgia pond. I would just have much fewer of them per acre than I do right now with them being fed. So adding the feed doesn't make the fish bigger. The ratio of predators to prey is what makes the fish bigger. If I stock, say, 200 bass per acre in that 100 pounds of fish per acre, low productive Georgia water, I would just have an extremely stunted bass population that would never grow past about 8 inches. Yeah, I have to drop it way down. I have to come way down um, on my numbers of bass that I stock to keep that ratio the same. Think about it like 20%, 80%. You want 20, like that's probably about right. About 20% predators, about 80% prey. Whether I have 100 pounds of fish per acre, and that's 20 pounds and 80 pounds, or I have 200 pounds of fish per acre, where that's 40 pounds and 160 pounds. You see, the ratio is the same, even though the biomass doubled. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. I think I said that right. All right, so I'm familiar with a study, seen red color vision in largemouth bass, University of Michigan, I believe, wondering how accepted its findings are. Its findings are accepted if it's documented, published scientific research paper. It's arguing about that stupid, right? There's no, its findings are its findings. Whether you like them or not is irrelevant to me, as long as it's it sounds like it's research conducted by the University of Michigan. Yeah, I stand by it because what they did is they proved it with math. 2 + 2 is 4, to simply put it. Yeah, its findings are accurate. Um, I personally don't even really subscribe to what color a lure is matters all that dang much. Bass hunt as much or more with a lateral line system. You can cut the eyes out. A bass can be blind and still feed. That's one thing that these guys just never touch on. Vibration signature in the water. How is that bait moving the vibration of the water? So to understand what I'm talking about, you have to understand the lateral line system. And so what it is, it kind of looks like a cell with exposed, has a little hair in the middle, and as vibrations in the water kind of wiggle the hair, and it gives the bass an idea, not an idea, it gives the bass exact location of what's around it with no vision whatsoever. They can feel what's around them by the vibration in the water. Okay. That's how they can feed in muddy water when they can't see 2 inches away from their face, but they're chewing that day. Yeah, they're using their lateral line to hunt. They're not using vision. Now, there's limitations to the lateral line. I think it's like about twice its body length. So, 20 inches is maybe 30 inches away. I think a 20-inch fish could feel something maybe that distance away. It's got to be pretty close to it. So if you think about it that way, if you just make it its body length, we know it can feel it its body length. So 20 inches away from a fish in either direction, if it's a 20-inch fish, that's probably a good guesstimate about where it can feel the lure. So if I know that, and I do this, you make your cast about 2 feet apart when you're working water. And then that way the fish can feel everything, and any decent fish can feel the lure around it and not even need to see it. Now, of course, I don't mean to cause a panic attack and cause all these guys who are in love with colors to, go crazy on me. Certainly they're important. And I've noticed the higher the pressure, the more important the color is, and the more important getting matching the hatch gets. And point being, when you're a private lake manager like I did all those years, color, it wasn't that big a deal. You weren't dealing with highly pressured fish. So did colors matter? Sure, you could have some lures that were more productive than others sometimes, but you don't find the fish just shutting down to all but one thing color wise like you do on public lakes, I guess is my point. Yep, Garrett brought up a good point there. Ag lime. Frank, what's up? Let me click back over to Instagram real quick. He says he posted a link, some interesting stuff. They dissected a largemouth bass. I found 2 red receptors. One, yeah, that's normal fish biology. They see about like us, rods and cones wise, but they're missing. They see slightly different. I covered it a long time ago. I'll bring it back up. I'll run the post up again. Get my ducks in a row about that. Again, because it doesn't really strike me as critically important color wise. I mean, give me a black lure, give me a white lure. I'm ready. Oh, sure. You're welcome on the lateral line information. Yeah, that all sounds like pretty normal stuff that I learned 30 years ago in school. Nothing new there. Yes, they see in color. No, they don't quite see like us. They'll see the orange is a little bit brighter. There was some good stuff about it about 2 years ago floating around on the internet post wise about how changing the light. And of course, you got to consider too, like light penetration matters. What color the water is matters. Visibility of that water matters. There's so many things, so many variables that aren't discussed around color. That's what I find color discussions boring, because they're not really taking in all the variables, and it's always the same kind of repetition. It's really no different than the safe fish handling we're trying to cover right now. I tell guys, hey, let's not boat flip the fish on dry carpet, especially in the winter. And then I turn on YouTube, and what do I watch? I watch boat flip fish on professional bass fishing tournaments time after time after time. So what good is it of me to go on there and try to tell 35,000 people about safe fish handling when 35 million people are watching the wrong thing get rewarded millions of dollars on TV? If I were in the fishing tournament and you boat flipped a fish, automatic DQ. You're out of here. And then guess what would happen? Guess what would happen? Take that $150,000 check right out of their pocket for flipping that bass like that. Call it animal cruelty. You know what I mean? Out there and drag your dog down the road on purpose. See what happens to you. Drag all the skin off your dog. Drag him down the road once a week. See what happens to you. I don't see the difference. That's what I'm looking at is animal cruelty. Complete lack of understanding of how to keep that animal alive. I don't know how else to put it. Drake's got another question on here. There's a lot of documentation in knowing bass, which is how old? How old? I think are you asking me how to age a fish? A quick way to age a fish is through the scales. The scales lay down growth rings like a tree. So you can put it under a dissection microscope. You can count the number of years it's been alive. The other way to do it's kind of the same way, but you use it with the ear bone called the ogulith, and you got to kill the fish to get it out. So if you don't care about killing them, the ogulith is the most accurate way to do that. But if you just want to get a kind of rough guesstimate, scale gets there close enough. That's a good idea, Frank. Or you can just fish on top of the water, like you guys do over there, Canada. Stay suspended on that stuff. What's that stuff called? Oh, yeah, ice. All right, let's see what we got. Yeah, one cast. MLF is catch, score, release with a ref on the boat. Yeah, and I like that tournament, and I like kayak tournaments. But what about the 40 years before that? What excuses do those guys have? The professionals. Where's their excuse at? Because like I said, everything that I've talked about, from my education at the university can easily be Googled and not even have to dig for it. So the only reason you don't know this information is you just are so lazy you haven't even tried to learn. And I'm tired of it. There's no excuse for it. I mean, have you not even had a job at a pet store or a Walmart with a fish tank? Because this is like really basic knowledge for fish. The most basic, how to make a biscuit. You need flour, right? Well, how to handle a fish. Don't touch it with dry stuff. The end. That's just how it is. But for some reason, sheeple, herd mentality. Well, he's doing it. They're doing it. I can do it. It's no big deal. No, it is a big deal. And just because everybody's doing it doesn't make it right. Next weekend, don't have any ice he can stand on. See, it was like 40. No, it was like 38 degrees here this morning, and I was really cold. I don't like standing on ice, Frank. Let's see. Drake's talking about some European tournaments or something there. That's cool. And I think you're going to see it change. I think, well, quite frankly, I think pages like mine are maybe having an impact at this point. Maybe I draw enough water and have been enough places that maybe Maybe not. I can tell you what, boys, if there's 35,000 people that follow across these socials, there's 35 million that absolutely hate me. So, thanks for sharing and being positive. I really appreciate it. And they're not going to stop me. I don't care. Wrong is wrong. I don't care how many people are wrong. We'll just keep going. And hopefully, and kind of my idea behind it is, since everyone is doing it wrong and thinks it's okay, right? Once they figure out that and it becomes socially unacceptable to do it wrong the way it should be, that doing things right should be the right way to do things. But once it becomes socially unacceptable, when enough people go, hey, man, you're doing that wrong, I bet it switches like that. And I bet their content switches like that. And I bet their attitudes switch like that. When the public shaming works, man. And you just have to get the public up to speed. So that's why I'm here. I worked an entire career like Garrett, young Garrett there, trying to be trying to do the right thing, trying to be a biologist, trying to go out in the world and manage ponds and do what he learned to do in school. And speaking of that too, I get a lot of blowback from guys about school and about college boy, a lot of comments like that, but you got to understand, fisheries guys, yeah, we went to a university, but we're more blue collar than the typical. We were trained to do a job. It's a professional degree, like going and getting my buddy is my buddy Mickey, his pond, Wilson Farm Pond, we've covered many times. He's a commercial electrician, and he had to go be an apprentice, and for like 4 or 5 years. Well, about the same time you're in college, right? 4 or 5 years. And then he could go out and he could work at places like, big places, factories, he wires up, equipment and stuff like that. But he had an apprenticeship to learn how to do that, to be good at his job. So in his case, he doesn't get electrocuted to death. And that's smart. And Garrett and I pretty much had the same type of training. We have, we went to a university, but there was labs, there was field experience. And then for guys like us who are fortunate enough to get a job in a field that we got our degree in, then that education continues on. And just like my friend Mickey, the electrician, or my friend Garrett, the biologist, the more time you spend in a business doing it like that, the better at it you're going to get, the more things you're going to learn. And unfortunately for us, like, I certainly don't think anybody tells a commercial electrician how to wire a plug, but every best fisherman on the planet tells me how to manage a pond. Figure that out. It's like, when you start managing ponds for a while, you can tell me. Yeah, one cast over on IG is asking if I've been fishing lately, and yeah, I have. I got skunked over at Lake Panasoffkee the other day. Trying to venture out a little bit. Met a buddy over there, and he was in Tampa on vacation, my buddy Jim, and we went fishing. But we had a good conversation, but a bad fishing day. It was a good time though. I got a question on Instagram. What do I think of Shaw Grisby? Don't even know who that is. Sorry, man. If he's a professional fisherman, I probably don't follow him because he's a professional fisherman, and it has nothing to do with, I just lump them collectively into a group of people who don't listen to me at all, ever, or any PhD level. And I have story after story after story, and I could name drop and I could do all that. I'm not going to do it. But professional fishermen, the only professional fisherman that I've given me any form of respect whatsoever is Rick Clunn. I think he truly can listen and hear and understand what's going on. No, I take that back. Brian Latimer. Yep. I forgot about Brian. I've seen Brian make some posts about doing the right things, listening and learning. And so there's two. I can name two that I've seen um, promoting what I agree with and what I was taught, as a fisheries professional. And yeah, I just don't understand why fisheries professionals can't get a little respect that they deserve, but they don't get it. So that's what drives me. I don't want to leave. I don't know. Maybe today's my last day on this world, but I've done as much as I can do to help guys like Garrett and get the word out to people. So everybody can be on the same page, and young biologists like Garrett can make a living, because you can't make a living and nobody believes what you're saying. And nobody believes what you're saying when everything they see on social media is opposite of what you're saying. People can't associate having 1 million followers and being 100% wrong. That just doesn't register. They got to be right because they have so much money and so many followers. But in fishing, that's really the opposite. Because they don't see the difference between fishing and fisheries management. Being good at fishing doesn't make you a good pond manager or lake manager, and being a good lake manager doesn't make you necessarily good at fishing. Like, let's just say, for example, it was myself fishing in a fishing tournament and Rick Clunn and Brian Latimer. Who's putting their money on me? That would be stupid, right? I would get blown away. I don't fish on that level. I will freely admit it. My experience as a biologist and as a scientist and managing ponds doesn't do anything to help me compete against Rick Clunn or Brian Latimer. 0% does that help me. They will smoke me. They're talented and good at their job. And those two particular guys happen to understand that I'm talented and good at mine. And they're the only two, I guess. Let me click back over to IG. Oh, nothing new over there either. So anyway, back to the point. Got a little sidetracked there. Safe fish handling. So there's a couple things that we can talk about. How long have we been going here? 37 minutes. We got plenty of time left. 8 folks. Welcome aboard, everyone. Oh, here's Kev. Got a question coming through. What you got here, Kev? What electronics do I use? My depth finder died in the fall, and I'm looking for recommendations. Oh, good. Thank you for following, my friend. Appreciate the question. And well, I'm kind of new into electronics, Kev. For the last, I don't know, since the 90s, however long that's been ago, I ran an electrofishing boat, and you don't need to really understand depth too well. Now, electrofishing boat is only good for about, maybe 8 or 10 feet down before you need specific gear to get a little deeper. But in the sampling work that I did, that was more than enough to capture all the fish that I needed to capture. And a lot of times, smaller lakes aren't much deeper than 10 feet anyway. So that being said, I didn't work with boats that had electronics over the years because I simply just didn't need it. I could figure out depth with a long dip net that I use on the boat most of the time, and the shock boat rolled them. You can't outfish shock boat. So I never really used one. I had a cheap one for a while. I kept breaking the transducer, going in and out of places where there's boat ramps, no boat ramps, excuse me, which was 99% of my world. So the depth finder was counterproductive to what I needed to get done most of the time. But that being said, I've got 2 units on the rig I got right now. And the one unit is a Lowrance Elite. It's got the side imaging on it. It's got the down, sonar on it as well. I like the side imaging feature on it, and I've gone out with guides and I've picked their brain about how to read that side imaging. Now, I will say this: my unit is small; it's like a 9-inch screen, and that makes seeing actual fish on the side imaging pretty challenging for me anyway, because I'm old. But if you go, I like the side imaging feature the best for just searching. And I'm mostly just looking for contour changes or, ledges, trees on those ledges, whatever, what I might be looking for. But once you learn how to read the side imaging, it really does. You can really see a lot with it. And like most that unit wasn't that expensive. I think it was like maybe 900 or $1,000. Now I do have forward facing as well. And I bought that just to tinker with it more than anything. I got one of the first Garmin units that came out. A buddy of mine upgraded his, sold me Mickey. I just mentioned Mick. He sold me his old Garmin unit. And so I put it on my boat. And right now it's down. I've got to get a new mount for it. But I do like the side, the forward facing. And around here in the shallow water, I turn it so it looks like this. It's not necessary because out here it's just so shallow. It doesn't really work well in shallow water when you turn it this way. So I'll be just looking off the front of the boat, kind of in a wide angle like that, and just getting an idea of where the fish is swimming around that way. But I still find myself going back to just fan casting and fishing the way I used to fish. I'm not using the electronics the way that I should because I don't really like, because of the way, I guess, my reception by tournament bass fishermen as a challenge and someone to fight with rather than someone to learn from. It's put me off tournament bass fishing altogether. I don't like fishing in tournaments. I don't like the disrespect that I get. I don't like it's kind of like being online in real life. I tried it. It's not for me. So I don't fish in tournaments, and I don't like competitive fishing. But what I do like, though, I do like the kayak guys. I do support Kayak Adventure Series with Drew Gregory. Drew Gregory doesn't treat me like that, and he listens. And a lot of the kayak guys listen better than the glitter boat guys and seem to understand where I'm coming from a little bit more. So I do support that Kayak Adventure Series, and I will be there doing a talk with Kayak Adventure Series. And like to thank Drew for inviting me to that. I'm very proud to be going to that. And I certainly will help anybody. I won't hold it against them. I'll help anybody who asks me for help. But I also won't forget 30 years of disrespect. And that's just where I stand on that. But yeah, the kayak guys, I've really enjoyed doing that. I've decided I'm not going to fish in that tournament. I'm just going to go be a presenter and maybe get a booth again this year, maybe give out a few stickers or something. I don't know, do something for everybody there. But I'm just not going to fish competitively. It's not in my nature. Yes, Kevin, thank you so much for that, my friend. I was going to make a post for you, but I could not find your eBay. Like you mentioned that you sell books, and I wanted to do a post for you so you could maybe get some book sales out of it. But I couldn't find it. So if you could just throw it in there or DM me on Instagram if you don't mind. I can find it easier from that probably than on here. But yeah, I did find that, and I started reading it, and it's a really good book. And it's just like you said, it's kind of more geared towards trout than it is, but I'm learning from it, man. It's great, and I'm going to bring some stuff about it. I'll probably I might get a chance to read some at work tomorrow. My job's not that demanding. But yes, thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much for that. I did get that book, and I really appreciate that. And I'll be glad to return the favor in posts and whatnot if I can get your information. Thank you, sir. Check Instagram again. Oh, Drake has a good question. Has forward-facing sonar revealed fish behavior that surprised me? No, no. Actually, what forward-facing sonar has done is revealed fish behavior that I already knew that any fisherman could have asked me 30 years ago. Again, I ran an electrofishing boat. I know where the fish are. I don't need forward-facing sonar to tell me that. uh, all right, let's run one up right now for Kev. He's on Amazon. Luna Coffee, 29,000 books, and a few hundred for fishing. All right. I'm gonna forget that 1,000,000%, and I don't have a pen. All right. Don't, if I forget, Luna Coffee, don't, if I don't make a post, one word. All right. Luna Coffee, one word. Okay. Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, do that. Do that. I'm going to do my best to remember that. I'll do my best to remember that. One cast is asking if he can get on a shock boat. Yeah, actually, you can. We had some guys go with us this year when I had Garrett Stamport from Pristine Pond come and do my electrofishing survey at the pond for me this year for two reasons. One, I sold the shocking boat, and I don't ever want to get on one ever again. I did come out of retirement for that one job, but that is work, and I don't like doing it anymore. So that's why Garrett's there. And like I said, young man's trying to get it going in the world. And oh, there we go. Thanks, Garrett. Appreciate you, bro. But yeah, Alex Rudd came with us this year, and we got him on the rig with Garrett. And I know Garrett goes from Texas to Georgia in the spring. So if he's coming through your area, you could probably, slip him a few bucks and take a ride. Yeah, exactly. And we're going to go again. One of my posts, I'm very proud to say, got me invited to speak at Texas A&M University a couple weeks ago. One of the teachers follows along and asked me if I'd come speak to his kids. And of course I'll do that. I'll be proud to do that. It's a great honor to do that, to speak at Texas A&M, a great school. We might go back and forth a little bit about football and SEC stuff and whatnot, but come on, let's be for real. Texas A&M is what's up. I had a good friend play football. Ed Jasper played football at Texas A&M in the 90s. And then he went on to be a pro, and he's passed on now, unfortunately, but he was a good friend of mine for many years, and he told me all about Texas A&M. And if I was a Texas resident instead of a Georgia resident, Texas A&M would have been where I went to school, because that's what they have that I like. That's right up my alley, Texas A&M. So yeah, I'm very proud to go out to Texas and talk to those kids, and hopefully maybe give them some ideas. Oh, well, Georgia's been good for a couple years now, but I'd say they're pretty similar programs, really. I mean, Georgia does have that back-to-back natty thing going there, but that's real recent. Up until that point, I don't know. Texas A&M's had some good football, good football teams. I know that team Ed played on. I think they were like a Georgia team. They had all 11 guys got drafted off that defense in the 90s. Probably mid 94, 95. I guess Ed was there. They stomped it though. They were good. They were a good club. Won't sleep on A&M. But no, good schools all the way around. Clemson's got a good fisheries program. Auburn has a great fisheries program. University of Illinois has a fisheries program. Lots of small fisheries programs around too, popping up different places. People I've never even heard of. You can study all kinds of things about fish. It's pretty cool, and that makes me happy too. Helping kids. I have a lot of kids come on and say that they didn't even know that you could major in something like this, and yep, you can. And I was the same way. I know how you feel. As soon as I saw that there was books about fish, I said, well, I'm going to go read those fish books. And I transferred schools, went to Georgia. I was down at Valdosta State for a few years, which is in South Georgia, not too far from where I'm at right now. And that was a good school. I like Valdosta, but they didn't have fisheries program. All right. So we got Kev's Luna coffee deal. Let me go back. Make sure I didn't miss any questions on here. Well, we started out talking about safe fish handling, but we got off topic quick, didn't we? Always swerve back, double check IG. Nothing much there. Coming up on 51 minutes. Thanks for joining, everyone. If you have any questions about anything, just throw them up there. I'll try to get to them. Anyway, safe fish handling. So when you take the fish out of the water, you need to be careful with it. Don't touch it with dry hands. Don't lay it on dry surface. Don't lay it on dry dirt. If you intend on releasing it. Now, if you're intending on putting a fillet knife to it, I don't care. And that's the thing. That's the one thing that I find interesting is like, I tell somebody that, hey, that's not the right way to handle a bass for catch and release. If you're going to release it, let's try to release it alive. And they start calling me Karen, and they start going on about, I'm going to kill the fish just to kill the fish. Well, first of all, it would be doing me a huge favor if you pay attention to me at all. I don't care if you kill the fish. As a matter of fact, it's probably helping the fish population if you do kill the fish at this point. Again, because does anybody listen to us as scientists and say, hey, wait, the lake has too many bass in it and you should probably keep some. Hence the reason why all these public lakes have limits. Like if it was completely necessary for a bass to be released, they would be all catch and release lakes. The scientists wouldn't allow you to keep any of them. But the last time I checked, the catch and release lakes are the ones that are stunted out, and the ones where people harvest them are the ones that produce big fish. That being said, Garrett's got one here. Did we touch on live wells and holding fish? Let's do that. Why not? All these guys are running live wells. Let's run live wells. So your live well is a cheap, chintzy piece of junk version of our professional fish haul tanks. The little 12-volt aerators that trickle water in there, yeah, that's not the best form of aeration. And if you haven't seen compressed oxygen aeration, I got one I fabricated out of some old parts that I had in the shed on a video I put on YouTube or Instagram. Well, both actually, either place last week. Give you an idea of how a professional would halfway. Like I said, I rigged it with junk I had laying around, but it still works pretty good. So whenever you confine fish into a tank, the first thing you're doing is stressing it out. If you wanted to be technical and you wanted to do it exactly right, you can cool those fish off. You can add a little bit of ice to that tank and cool them down. You'll notice that they'll hold better in the wintertime than the summertime because of that. Two reasons: that you'll slow their body, reduce the stress on them, but you'll also reduce the oxygen consumption, and the water holds more oxygen when it's cold than when it's warm. You got a lot of things going for you in the wintertime in cooler water versus holding them in summer water, hot water. Now, like we said earlier, we have an increased risk of losing the slime coat by touching them with dry hands and killing them with bacterial infections over a long period of time. You'll never see those fish die from a bacterial infection. Turtles will catch them and eat them, and you just don't see them die. They'll get, slow and lethargic from being sick. But back to the point, when you're holding fish in a tank, adding a little bit of ice, non-chlorine ice, by the way. You don't want any chlorine in your ice. Any tap water in your live well will kill them quick. Chlorine is a hammer. Doesn't take much at all, and it'll kill them fast. So make sure your ice is clean, non-chlorinated ice. Chill them down a little bit. When it's hot, that'll help a lot. Adding salt to the water, a non-iodized salt. The iodine in salt is not good for them. So you don't like rock salt, road salt, bulk salt, any of those kinds of salt, or sometimes at the store, just the Morton salt, but it doesn't have iodine, non-iodized. That'll work fine too. There are also products, all kinds of products that you can put into the water. If they showed you the ingredients of those products, there are some slime coat protectants and different things like that in there. Most of the time, those products are just salt. So what's the salt for? It's like electrolytes for a long distance runner. So again, you put the fish in the tank, the fish gets stressed out. It doesn't like it. That stress causes the fish, because freshwater fish generally, they pee a lot, and they lose that stress, increases that peeing. So you've got a fish that just naturally needs to urinate a lot, due to not to go into a whole dissertation. They just pee a lot, just being freshwater fish. So stressing them makes them pee more, and then putting them in a tank causes that pee to build up. So you'll get ammonia poisoning. So that's why you do water changes, right? And all that peeing is losing electrolytes out of their body, just like if you were like running a long distance and you're sweating, all right, you're losing all those electrolytes. They'll get to a point where your electrolytes get so low, you'll just fail. Anybody's seen that. You'll see the runner's legs going out from under them because they're that's not good, They need fluids. So that's what the salt does in that water. You put them in there and it goes in through their gills, which transfers across, and puts the salt back in their body that they need to help combat that stress and that pee, from that peeing. So that's the reason why. And it's like significant, like especially for like game fish, like bluegill. I know that I've seen the study on bluegill. It's like a 90%. Like if you keep bluegill in a tank for a certain period of time, the study was about, and they would go and restock them, and they'd put them into a contained pond that they could pull down, and they noticed that a lot of the bluegill died if they were hauled a long distance. If you hauled them a short distance and didn't contain them for very long, you didn't have very much mortality. But the longer you hold them, the more they died. And then they added salt to the water, and it was like a 90% improvement in the numbers of death of the fish. It was significantly improved the survival of the fish just by adding a little bit of salt to the water. So it's very important, right? If you're going to confine a fish in a space, all these ideas, you kind of have to, understand the physiology of the fish, right? And that's what we try to do here is teach guys what I just did. Like I didn't make any of that up, and none of that's my opinion, right? That's just basic science, basic studying the biology of a fish, how it works. It doesn't resonate with most fishermen for some reason. If I didn't touch on something, Garrett, let me know. Oh, Frank's got one of those. We got Frank. Related to fish handling, summertime water temps, are there any hook wounds that are always a death sentence? Oh, yeah, you can kill them. Gills under the tongue with a jig, hit them in that artery into there. bleed them out quick. Yeah, high mortality, Frank. Like anytime you get that profuse bleeding like that, 90% plus mortality on the tongue hook or the gill hook. The profuse bleeding is the kiss of death. You can pretty much just put him in a cooler. Like I said, I would anticipate a 10% chance survival at best. It will swim away. Yes, it will swim away. That does not mean it's going to live. Big Malone, what's up, my friend? Add light. Okay. Yeah, no. You need to be light with the salt. You definitely don't have. You can't over salt it as well. You can Google it for exact ratios, but I would say we used a coffee cup about like this much in a standard live well would be plenty. Just that much, 2 handfuls. It was a pot. We used a pot across a 250-gallon, like just a standard kitchen pot you'd boil water in. No, just they used it at the fish hatchery, and you would put about a third of that pot in a 80-gallon, 75-gallon hole. I think it was. I think I used to have. Were they 75, 51, two little, maybe 80-gallon holes? I had three 80-gallon holes. So yeah, it's not a tremendous amount of salt. And if you buy those products, it'll tell you right on the package how much you should use. And we just kind of threw it in there. After a while, you just kind of get a feel for it. And I didn't measure it, honestly. They just kind of threw it in there at the hatchery, and I just kind of copied them. I never really measured it, honestly, but I'm sure there's an exact math, like this many grains of salt for this many gallons of water, whatever. That's fine too. Just don't overdo it. You don't want to turn it into salt water or anything. You just want a little electrolytes in the water, and that'll help you a ton. All right, back on Instagram real quick. People come and go on there a lot. Oh, there's a good question. Some content creators catch a bass, force feed it a snack, and release it. Seems terrible. What does science say? I don't know. I guess it depends on what you mean by force feed. Put it in his mouth and let him go off with it. He's just going to eat it. I don't really that doesn't really bother me too much. I can't think of anything that, just like animal abuse wise, giving him a snack's not hurting him. I'm trying to think of anything negative that could come out of that. I mean, other than, handling it for longer than necessary. I don't really see giving them a snack. I mean, we'll see guys pull, loads of shiners up and dump them in the lake and give their fish snacks that way too. So I don't think a little extra meal or something is necessarily bad. But again, it's all in the context of how they do it as well. I certainly don't have a problem with them feeding the fish, but how they handle it, how is the fish being handled while they're doing that? You know what I mean? And how long is that taking? And it goes back into that kind of idea of, are we doing everything we can to make this process efficient? Or are we doing everything we can to keep the fish out of the water to make a big dog and pony show for the socials? The one thing that I see on the social media more than anything are hey, let's go to a lake, catch a bunch of fish, put them in a tank, and then hold them there all day long. So then we can all hold fish up and look how cool we are at fishing. I got a big problem with that. I don't like seeing that at all. Now, are you holding the fish like I hold the fish? All right, well, then maybe I'll let you slide on it. But I can virtually guarantee you are not. You don't know any of the things that we're talking about here, and all the fish that were held in that tank. Let's go back to what Garrett said. You want numbers on it. A pound of fish per gallon of water on a good aerator, on a compressed oxygen aeration. We don't exceed that. And actually, I don't even really like exceeding a half a pound of fish Like I said, when you go get 10 bands, go get $10,000, put it in the fish tank. I highly recommend you listen. That'll get your attention, won't it? 10,000 of your dollars in a tank. Do I have that attention now? Mm-hmm. You want to stack them in there, 4 pounds to the gallon when it's your money? Watch that money float up and die? You won't be doing it then, Chief. I promise you. That's another thing, too. How much you think it costs these guys, a private lake owner with an 8-pound bass who built the lake? How much you think that 8-pound bass is worth? You know what it costs to build a lake? When you break it down like that, when you break it down, the man built the lake to go grow bass in. That's why he built it. He went and got, how much, Garrett? Put a number up there. What's it cost? I don't even know. I haven't even built a new lake in so long. What's the cost of a new 10-acre lake? $1 million? $500,000? $100,000. What do you think? Which number is closer to getting you a 10-acre lake in your backyard? $100,000 or $1 million? Well, I can tell you it's going to depend on the way the land lays. It's going to depend on a lot of factors. How much money do you think you got to spend? You think you're going to spend $18 and get a pond in your yard? You better get your folding money, son. So now you take that 10-acre pond, and how many fish are you going to stock in it? You spend, let's just say you spend $100,000 on it, which is a low ball figure. Promise you that. But you got $100,000 in a 10-acre pond. How many fish are you going to put in it? Well, I know how many fish I'm going to put in it, 35 per acre or 350. Now divide that out. 350 fish to grow for $100,000 of expense. How much are they worth? Think I'm playing. You want to put my fish that are worth thousands of dollars a piece and it take all day long for a picture for social media? I don't think so, Chief. All right. I'm caught up on the questions, I think. Big Malone, what's up, man? You let him keep it? Yeah, I let him keep it too, man. I ain't hurt my feelings too much. I don't really like go around giving snacks. Now, here's an idea though. Something I always thought about. Like if you got a private lake and you're going around fishing, and every time you catch a fish, you give it a meal. What do you think would happen after a couple of years? Would the fish learn that biting the lure gets them a meal, and they just go over there and bite the lure so they can get a free snack? Think they're that? Because I can tell you from experience that a few minutes before a fish feeder goes off after a couple of years, the bluegill will just congregate right around it and be sitting there waiting for the fish feed to go off. I don't know. I can tell you this. If you take your fish feeder, I've done it. Or put this a different way. I had a guy who was a property manager for, well, I can't say who it was, but I signed a release thing, whatever those things are called. But anyway, rich dude had a property manager, as they all do. And that guy did everything out on the property, thousands of acres. And one of the things that he did then was a pond manager. So I consulted with him because he was there every day and he could be my eyes, and we worked together that way. But excuse me. No, Siri, nobody's talking to you.
Okay.
So the property manager would go down to the lake because they had a nice boathouse, and they kept the fish feed and everything in the boathouse, keep coons out of it. But he would actually go out on the boat with a scoop and throw the feed off the boat and go around. It was about a 12-acre pond, and he'd make a lap around the 12-acre pond, and he'd throw it around all the places, wherever he felt like throwing it, I guess. But he threw it off the boat, and I did it for about a year, and then one day I go out there and I back my boat in. They wave, and I'm going around and I'm looking behind me. I'm like, what in the world? And the school of bluegills following the boat. And then the feeding bass are following that. So I'm throwing my lure out the back of the boat over the school of bluegill and catching bass feeding that are literally following the boat. And they follow the boat all the way around because they just got used to the feed coming off of it. So take that for what it's worth. All right, back to Instagram, making sure questions. What about fizzing fish? Fizzing fish is tricky business, and people probably kill more of them than fizz them properly. For me, again, I'm not fishing in fishing tournaments, so if I catch a fish that won't go back down, he goes in the ice chest. And I very rarely caught fish like that anyway, because I wasn't fishing in fishing tournaments, and I don't like fishing when it's cold. So, to tell you the honest truth, my fish fizzing technique is probably horrible at this point. I only did that in school, really. And I don't know. I mean, will it work? Can it work? Absolutely. Yeah. You got to be good at it. Yeah, you do. And most guys just stabbing fish are probably just killing them. I mean, that is what it is. And again, like, there's nothing wrong. Just put him in a cooler and take him home and make fish tacos. You're not ruining the environment, keeping a few bass. Hopefully that will resonate with some guys one day. The whole complete misunderstanding of you can't keep any bass anymore is just ridiculous. You can't manage a pond. That's a big part of what drives me, because you can't properly manage a pond without keeping some bass. All right. That's not going to happen for you. At least your bass aren't going to be very healthy. Like, you can manage the pond. I take that back. You can definitely manage the pond and have a bunch of skinny, stunted 1 pound of fish that never grow. Go look at, I don't know, any pond in the country. Yeah, you can do it that way. It's not going to produce very big fish, but you can do it that way. It will produce big bluegill, because that is a trophy bluegill management strategy. So fundamentally, when you look at what's been preached across all bass fishing nation for the past 40 years, it's releasing fish. That is a trophy forage management strategy, trying to establish a trophy bass management plan. You're absolutely 100% in the wrong direction. You're going north. You should be going south. And again, probably, like, fundamentally why I can't sit and talk to people who are like that. Because again, we have to exist in Disneyland, Tinkerbell. We're going to throw all the bass back. They're going to get 20 pounds. No, you're not. That's not how that works. Culling is how you manage a bass population properly. I have never, not one time, over a 10-year period, managed a pond or small lake and not had to cull some bass at some point over that 10-year period. At some point, they're going to overspawn. At some point, you're going to have to deal with too many. Will you miss a spawn maybe 1 year? Sure. Will you have, like, maybe not enough bass 1 year? Absolutely. That's possible too. But I can't wait to get Derry Stockbridge on. Maybe we'll go. I'll have to call Derry again. He said he'd agree to come on. Derry did what I did in Atlanta. He's just got a 20-year jump on me. He's a little older. So but the good thing about Derry and talking to him is he was a pond manager before catch and release got started. Yep. Oh, wait. Oh, I can't wait to have Derry on. It's going to be a good one. Anyway, I don't see any more questions. An hour and 14. Anyway, I try to keep up with you guys stuff here and not get involved in the conversations too much. I don't see anything else, and I might just shut it down. Oh wait, there was one other thing I want to talk about safe fish handling, and that's that second hand. Say I got a fish by the lip right here, right, and I'm going to do the horizontal hold for a picture. Okay, don't grab the fish by the tail and arch it so its back is arched like that. Don't do that. Take your hand, wet your hand, and put it on his belly and literally lift his internal organs up, because all the internal organs sag down when the fish is out of the water, and that sagging can sag them so far they get damaged. And again, if you're going to put them in a cooler, I don't care. I promise you, you have killed more bass than me. I'm Darth Vader, them little green bastards, right? I have killed them by the thousands. Okay, so you're not going to trigger me with, I'm going to kill all the bass now. I don't care. Go for it, right? I'm talking about we need to handle them properly if we're going to put them back and let them live. So take your hand and get them under the belly and lift that belly up, lift that stomach up, lift that liver up, lift the internal organs, give them some support under there, right? That's helping them on that horizontal hold a great deal. And you know what else you're doing with that two-handed grip? You're taking pressure off the jaw, right? And we talked about that on a post today on Instagram. Jaw, spraining the jaw, breaking the jaw. A fish has only got one way to interact with the world, his mouth. Can't eat, can't live. That's it. So, and I had a guy send me a video. I should have saved it. I probably did save it. It got buried in my feed somewhere. He had an 8-pounder, and he said, "Did I break its jaw?" He was doing everything perfect. Like, he did not do anything wrong. He picked it up by the lip and was lifting it out of the water. And as soon as that fish's tail came out of the water, that jaw went pop, pop, like it sounded like your knee popping. He goes, "Did I break that fish's jaw?" And I said, "Yep, you did." He goes, "What did I do wrong?" I said, "Nothing. You did nothing wrong. You killed it, though. I mean, he's done. He's cooked." And that's just how it is, right? Sometimes a deer runs out in front of a truck and gets whacked. That's just how it is. You didn't do anything wrong. That just, and maybe that fish, maybe the last fisherman weakened it, sprained it, and you happen to catch it again and bust it. Maybe it wasn't even on you. You know what I mean? Maybe it was just, who knows? But I've done it too. Trying to be very careful. 8, 9, 10-pound fish now. I'm not talking about these dinks, these 1-pound fish. I'll throw them on the bank. I don't care. If I don't, I'll put them in a fillet knife so quick. A 1-pound bass, I'll fillet them. Get them out of here. No problem. That's not what I'm talking about. You can fling them around by the jaw all day, and that's part of the problem. Guys are used to flinging dinks around because these lakes don't produce anything good. They're not used to holding big fish. Rant over. You pick that 8-pound fish up by the jaw. Man, then you suspend it for like 30 seconds on a fish scale. Come on, man. And it's flopping around. It's like, it's just making me cringe. I just can't even watch it. Oh God. It's doomed to it. It's just a pet peeve. I can't stand it. So I hope all these ideas help. And I hope, because for us to grow trophy fish consistently, we have to handle the fish properly. Okay, we can't continue on the way it's going right now with the uneducated doing this to our fish, to our large fish population. There's a reason why you can't hardly find a fish over 8 pounds anymore, right? And you can just take everything we talked about today and then add you've skewed every single lake to not have big fish by the way we're treating them. Now, are we killing the bass population? I had a conversation with on a comment about that. No, you're not ruining the bass population. You're always going to have bass. But if you look at like a pyramid, right? These big group of fish are the 1-pounders. Every pound size class you go up, you get a smaller number of fish. Well, now we have a larger fishing tournaments, larger numbers of fish tanking and trucking and boating and mishandling with dry hands and boat flipping all the fish at this top part, and none of the fish. These fish go back. These fish get held in a tank. And you wonder why there's no 10-pounders anywhere. Yeah, it's pretty obvious. They're dying. They are not making it to 12 pounds anymore. When's the last time you saw one? When's the last time you personally touched a 12-pound bass? I know it's hard to do. I ran a shaka boat for 5 years. Perfect, Big Malone. But you good, man. We know you good. You've been here a minute. You know what's up. And that's all I can ask. Just an honest, just listen. Just, hey, just listen. I don't know why it's so hard, but it is. Knox over on IG is asking a question. Have I talked to Mike Buka about what's happening with Dobbins rods? No, I have not spoke to Mike. Mike is currently somewhere in the Midwest, I think at a trade show selling his stuff. And I haven't been back to Atlanta in a while. So no, I have not, but I will the next time I talk to Mike. Mike knows everybody. You got that right, Big Malone. A lot of BS going around. I don't know, man. All we can do is just keep plugging along, help the people who will listen. And like I said, I've kind of changed. I don't know if you've noticed, I've changed my tone a little bit. I've become impatient. I need to work on that. That's on me. But I think public shaming at this point is in order when you can just type it into any phone anywhere and get all this information. This isn't hidden like it used to be. I can understand how people didn't see the safe fish handling stuff that was at every single county extension office since like the 50s. But whatever. At this point, there's no excuse, though. You literally have every bit of information at the tip of your fingers. There's no point. I can't even understand how somebody would look at my name, title aquatic biologist, and then just decide to come in here and tell me that everything I'm talking about is nonsense without maybe typing into Google first or AI. Please type me into AI. Go ahead. Take anything I said and put it in AI and see what it says. Let that thing call me a liar. Hey, Roy, what's up, man? Roy says he's not handling a bass. Yep. That's perfect, man. See how hard that's not hard at all. Roy's got it. Good job, Roy. I appreciate you guys listening, man, and being supportive. There's not many people supportive. And that's all I can say is I sincerely appreciate the help and the sharing of the stuff. Guys shared. I'm one of the guys that follows over on Instagram. He's an Italian guy living in Italy, bass fishing over there, and shared the post from today. And there's dudes starting to follow from Italy. I've got to screenshot the thing and get Google to translate what they're talking about over there because I don't speak Italian. But I just think that's cool, man. I never in a million years thought that I've talked to people in Japan, South Africa, Italy. That's amazing to me that you can have that kind of Laos, LA. I have to look it up again. There's a bunch of people that follow me in Africa, thousands. Must be a school or something over there that picked it up. I don't know, but I'm really proud that my work over these years can be used by people like this. I believe in open source information. I don't necessarily agree with capitalizing information like this. It's just how I personally feel about it. That's why I give it all away. Like guys like Garrett, he can take it, especially, and take my experiences and things and add it to his experiences, and know what I know, and then become better and advance pond management in a better way than me. If I hid the information and tried to monetize the information, I'd love to get paid for this. Don't get me wrong, but we don't live in a society where scientists can hide their information at this moment and then monetize the information. We just don't. We don't have that opportunity as a scientist. Nobody believes what we talk about. I have 30 years of experience of people not listening to me to back that up. Science denial is very real, and it's very sad because it's just a measurement. And I know with politics and things like that, and some of the things that have happened with us, that it calls the legitimacy of science into question. But what you have to remember here is we are not getting paid billions of dollars. There's nothing to extort here. There's no profits to gain here. It's really, really hard to do what Garrett's doing and be a professional pond manager simply because nobody believes what you say. So there's no reason to skew the numbers because there's no money to steal here. Does that make sense? 2 + 2 is 4 here. And there's a very, very few people that even give a rat crap about fisheries management. I can promise you 99% of people who live on lakes don't care about the fish. I've worked for them. They won't pay you to manage the fish population. They live at the lake, but they don't fish in the lake. Figure that one out. Well, Roy, I appreciate that, man. And that's okay. And I'll say this: I've had these conversations many times, and I've gotten blowback for years, many times. But then those guys that blow back at me sometimes the hardest become they sit back and they process it. They do go hit Google. They do their research. They do look into it, and they realize, wait a minute, this guy's not lying to me, and I was wrong. And then all of a sudden, you go from a guy who was your biggest, quote unquote, for lack of a better term, enemy, or arguing with you, giving you the what for, to your biggest supporter. And it's irrelevant to me, honestly. I'm not here to be popular. If anybody can tell that by anything that I write, I'm here to do the right thing. I'm here to help guys like Garrett and guys who own ponds and fishermen who care enough to listen to me. If you feel about me personally is irrelevant. And I don't know. I just try to I'm here to help the fish first and foremost. Somebody's got to do it. And if that means nobody likes me, okay, then nobody likes me. But did I help the fish? Because that's the primary goal. That's just the way I see it. Hey, MD. The only doctor I like. What's good, man? I appreciate you, MD. Thank you. Yep, that's the primary goal, boys. Help the fish. And to help the fish, I got to help the fishermen. I got to help the pond owners. And I don't know. It's been really rewarding. I don't mean to beat it down too much. You can let it. You've let negativity beat you down, and I don't. I try not to. At the end of the day, if I had one person on here listening to me, I'd still be here. It wouldn't even matter. I'd talk on this thing if nobody was here. It's just important to me. And I think it's becoming important to a lot of people. I did do an interview with a guy who wrote an article in Outdoor Life. Oliver Nye from Big Bass Streams was in it and got me on. Thank you, Oliver. Just give a shout out to Oliver. He's always supported the page. Um, Good fisherman, good guy, trying to do the right thing. Got to appreciate that. Oliver got well, I talked to Brian Latimer at ICAST this year, but he's friends with Oliver. They do a lot together. And I think that helped me there. But I actually approached Brian at ICAST. I saw he had been posting some stuff about bass harvest and talking about things in an educated way. And I just thanked him, And then next thing you know, he's following the page. So, shout out to Brian. Thank you so much. I appreciate any kind of support that I can get. And it's really not for me. It's for the fish, All right, Roy's got a question coming through. What do you got for me, Roy? If you have 2 or 3 ponds on your property, can you have a bass, crappie, and catfish lake? Sure can. I've done that many times, actually. I don't usually recommend crappie in small ponds. If you want to catch crappie, you really need to go to the river or to a bigger lake. They just don't do well in there. I've never stocked a crappie in a pond or a lake because they just handcuff you real bad. They're too predatory. They eat you out of house and home. You can actually see it in the data when you start measuring your bass. It took me a couple of years, probably more than a couple of years. It took me a while, but be electrofishing lakes that had crappie and didn't have crappie, and I would notice the differences in the weights in the bass because I'd be at one, then at the next one, and I did it year after year after year. And it says plainly in the book, you really don't want crappie in a pond. And I from my field experience, can back that up. You generally be tricked by it, just like most new lakes. Like if you stock a new pond and put some crappie in it, you'll probably have pretty decent fishing for a few years. But over the long term, you'll notice a drop in all the fish because of them. They just crowd up, and you can't keep enough of them to matter, it seems like. So for all those reasons, I wouldn't recommend having crappie in a pond. And if you do have them, be willing to drain the pond and start it over. There are some I've seen some fisheries messing around, like I think diploid or triploid crappie, sterilizing the crappie, trying to get them not to spawn. I'm not familiar. I don't have any experience with those fish in the field though, so I can't speak to that. But if I was to have a crappie pond, I'd probably drain and restock it about every 5 years or so. Just try to keep it somewhat balanced, because once it gets out, it's out. It's not coming back. I've seen guys for years try to correct crappie populations by fishing and harvesting that way. It just doesn't work usually. Yeah. I've actually seen guys go catch, work their tails off, keeping crappie out of a pond, only for the fishing to get worse. Work their tails off for making it worse. So it adds an uncontrollable element to it. And as a pond manager, we don't like things that we can't control. Yeah, I understand what you mean, Roy. I mean that too. I don't want them in my lakes at all. Crappy. But yes, I've done this many times. Let's say you had a trophy catfish lake, or I've done wipers, striper white bass hybrids, hybrid bass can go in small ponds and take feed just like catfish. So you can have a trophy catfish wiper pond. You could have a trophy bluegill pond and a trophy bass pond all on the same property. So it just depends on what you want to fish for. That's real easy to do. A guy like myself or Garrett or any other biologist out there could help you if you have that multiple pond problem, which I wouldn't call a problem. You certainly can manage each pond, each fishery for a unique goal and have a real cool fishing experience all in one place. Absolutely. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you on that one, Frank. I can see like it would be a disconnect. I don't think the guy at Texas A&M invited me to go speak there because he thought my field experience was going to hurt his students. um, that's an invaluable thing that you can only get by working in the field. But at the same time, you can't effectively work in the field without if you don't have the prior academic education to help you navigate. I would never, ever, ever have been able to figure out ponds the way I with just fishing knowledge. My line of thought before I went to college was exactly like everybody else's line of thinking is exactly right now. Like, I've never heard this before. Like, I've been fishing. But fishing doesn't make you a scientist. Fishing doesn't make you understand plankton and water quality and hydrology and limnology and predator prey ratios, and the list goes on and on and on and on, right? The point is the two go hand in hand. And if you have somebody that just read a book and has never stocked a pond, sprayed the pond, managed a fish population, managed weed control, just read it in a book, you're going to get the information that's in the book. And when that information, it's not that the book is wrong, it's that, all right, let me use a real world example. That's what I'm good at. Let's relate it to the real world. All right. So in the real world, I decided to open a lake management business in the late 90s, and I went out into the world and I came across a 40-acre lake, and it was covered in Brassinia, which is called water shield or snot bonnet or dollar bonnet. It looks like a small lily pad about that big and has a red stem that goes down to the bottom of the lake, and it's covered in a gelatinous sheath that prevents chemical uptake from the water. So you need to use something granular or something on the surface of the leaf. All right. So they hired me. I'm new. I'm a rookie, just a young kid out of school, never treated it before ever. And it's a 40-acre lake coming out about 20 yards. So I estimated I probably had between 11 and 12 acres of water shield to treat on a 40 acres of water, because it was growing out to where it got deep. But I mean, it was choked out. Like, you couldn't fish. You couldn't hardly launch a boat. If you tried to walk through, you get tangled up. It was a danger to pets and kids and anybody who tried to get in the water. It was inhibiting fishing and boating. And for those two reasons alone, it had to go. And it was in a fancy neighborhood with people looking out of the water who were tired of looking at a bunch of lily pads. So they paid me to get rid of it. So I went out, I looked up in the book, what kills Brassinia? Well, granular 2,4-D kills it really well. Okay. So I went and spent about $3,800, I think it was, on granular 2,4-D. And then I fabricated a plate on the front of the John boat that I could mount a spreader, like a salt spreader, to go on the back of a truck in the hitch. Put me a hitch plate on the front of my boat to mount a spreader up there so I could spread that granular 2,4-D evenly across 12 acres, because 12 acres is a pretty big spot. And because I'd never done it before, I called the guy who wrote the book that I read at University of Georgia about aquatic weed control. He was one of our teachers. And I called him to get any tips, tricks, or any idea about this project. Because again, I'm just a kid. I don't know what I'm doing. I've never done the job. And I get to talking to the teacher about it. And I can remember like the conversation. I can remember thinking that outside of what was written in his book, that was it. That's all he was just repeating to me what he wrote in the book. So I'm not going to call his name, but it's Dr. So-and-so. It was towards the end of the conversation, after he told me nothing. that I hadn't already read, I asked him, I said, how did you use this product before? Yes. How did you spread it? A Dixie cup. I was like, okay, well, that's not going to work for me. Well, he's like, well, how much do you have? I said, 12 acres. He said, you have 12 acres of water shield? I said, yes, sir. Oh, Lord, I've never even seen that much water shield. And that's when I knew I'm on my own. All right. We've just surpassed the book knowledge. Right. So that's when I started fabricating. That's when I started doing my spreader. That's when I started, I'm going to have to do this on my own. And I put that granular 2,4-D down and nothing happened. Because it takes granular 2,4-D a long time to work. It's got to go into the soil, into the roots, up into the plant. Did it mention that in the book? No, it didn't. So when my client came to me and was like, why isn't the plant dying? I didn't have an answer. Now, the next spring, after it had its time to be a systemic herbicide, the way it works, and I ended up, I ended up doing a couple things that worked for me, that helped me save the job. I ended up having that client for about 15 years. It was a real good place to work there. I got the job because I was able to navigate my way through that, with, again, I had help from academics with the book and all that. I would have never known what to use or anything. But at the same time, I couldn't get like the field experience. That was something I had to earn on my own. And that's not a takeaway from the college. That's just how it is. Right. So I don't know, I hope that helps. I wouldn't be so much worried about birds, Roy. I think that's kind of more of an old wives' tale than it is legitimate. Not that I haven't seen predatory birds drop fish or anything like that. But where your fish are going to, my experience with it is when heavy rains come, most ponds will have an emergency spillway. So you'll have a pipe that drains the pond, and then you'll have a little place that runs around the side where the water flows like a stream. When it gets too much for the pipe, that's the emergency spillway. And what people don't realize is when that water connects to the stream behind it, the fish come upstream. Fish don't get washed down. They move around in floods. There's all kinds of worms and terrestrial insects coming out of the ground. And a flood is a free-for-all feeding for fish populations. So you'll find them up in the edges, up in the woods, running up. You'll find all the little fish and all the big fish and all the fish really just wilding out during a flood feeding, because all the stuff's being washed in and coming out of the ground, that kind of thing. But point being is, I would personally, from my experience, be way more concerned about fish getting into my ponds during flooding events than from birds. Just saying. Oh, you're welcome, Roy. No problem, man. Again, I hope a little bit of field experience can help you. All right, I'm going to go back and check Instagram real quick. And I'm not seeing any questions. No, looks pretty good. All right, boys. Well, that's the live, and I got a couple more guys lined up to come on, and I've just been working a lot and doing some other stuff. I'll get Derry on here. I want to get John Key on here. Both guys have been in the pond and lake business for a long time, and we can draw off their experiences because they certainly have more and very different experiences than mine. And I think it's important. And I think, talking, having guys like Garrett and Preston, we've had biologists on here before that are in these past lives. If you guys are new, you can go back and check those out. But I think having a diverse group of biologists with a lot of field experience is very beneficial, all in the same place. Um, like I said, I can't answer all your questions, but I at least can find somebody who can. How about that? All right, boys. Hour and 45. That was a pretty good run at it. I appreciate everything. Hopefully I'll get these guys on this week or in the next couple weeks, and we can have those conversations and continue this on. I appreciate everything you guys have done, and I will see you later.